All right. Now, this is for the public. I might do something later on for patrons. If your patrons are listening to me, if you guys want a live stream later on, just hit me up in the comments section. But I'm gonna put this up as a morning talk because actually it was actually requested by a bunch of my patrons and some of my subs. Because there's a couple of things they want me to talk about. Well, several things, really. There's so much to talk about, man. It's probably ridiculous. I probably need to get my lazy behind up and put a lot of this stuff together. Because let's put it this way: if you can't find content in this environment, this global environment, you can't find content because there's too much happening. I just want to start off by saying, may you live in interesting times, which is a Chinese blessing and a curse, depending on which side you live on, because you get to see things that most people will probably never live to see. And to be alive to see it happen in front of your eyes is a blessing and a curse, because to see it happen in front of your eyes, that means you have to live through this shit. And we're going to have to live through it. So the top three things that happened yesterday, let's take them in order. First, we'll start talking about the suspension of sports, including the NBA, which is a serious thing. Because that, if nothing else, just the NBA suspending its season because of this virus potential is major. I had no doubts that it was major from the very beginning, but if we didn't know it then, we know it now. So don't go rushing out looking for toilet paper or hand sanitizer or bottled water, because it probably is not there. Okay? Unless you want to stand in that ration line. And I can say buying bottled water in this environment is stupid. You should be buying water filters, which is a smart thing. And if for the subs listening, if you really want to peep game, buy the water filters online before they go out of stock, because they're probably made in China too. Because it takes gallons of water to live on, and a good water filter costs you way less money than bottled water. The dumbest thing I ever heard. But hey, people do what they do. But the suspension of the NBA is probably smart, and it's probably telling you that this virus is more serious than it appears to be. It's not just some fly-by-night virus. And the NBA suspending their schedule so that you don't have crowds. It's one thing to protect the public, the players, but it's also to protect the public. Having 15, 20,000 people in close proximity in an arena, which half of them probably won't show up as this crisis gets worse. So it's very smart. California college sports actually already did it. I think California schools already started doing that, where they don't allow students to aggregate. I'm just waiting for it to actually sift on down from the universities all the way down to the local schools. Eventually that probably will happen, at least until it burns itself out. I talked to Dr. Johnson yesterday, and he was saying that one by one, the California universities are actually shutting down their campuses and taking their classes online, which is a smart thing to prevent large gatherings. And a lot of your students and your professors are worried. But sometimes money is money. But if something as important as the NBA, which makes billions of dollars a year, willing to forego profits and suspend its schedule, that speaks volumes. And so that's going to segue into the second thing, which is the virus itself. Now, anybody that follows me or follows where I go, because normally I would do this on a live stream. We probably would have talked about this over several weeks if I still had my Saturday night show. I have talked about it when I was asked in other people's live streams. It seems to be the question that comes up. That question actually came up like over a month ago, like almost 6 weeks ago, when it was first mentioned. And when I first heard about it, I didn't pay any attention to it. When it got serious, I finally looked into it and tracked it. When I know it was serious is like, say, when the guns come out. When you have a medical emergency and the guns come out, I mean, you're dealing with something that is out of the ordinary. You're not dealing with the average bear. And I do believe that the Chinese knew what it was, which as soon as they realized what the potential of the virus was, they start shutting down cities and shutting down traffic and isolating people. They also start burning bodies, which is something that they didn't tell you about. And Chinese are very, very opaque. They're very secretive. And what you see out of China is probably only like a fifth to a tenth of what is actually going on. My opinions about what this is and why they're so afraid, I do believe this is man-made. I do believe that this is genetically modified. And whether it's on purpose, well, anytime you do a genetic modification, it's on purpose. But is this the desired intent? And is with the safety protocols for certain things, I don't think this was the desired intent. I think this is an accidental release. Now, what the virus is intended for, nobody knows. But the protocols on this kind of stuff is lax. It's lax because an accidental release like this is possible. In fact, it's possible all over the world. Anytime you have access to the Cas9, which is the machine that actually modifies the genetic code of cells, actually, believe it or not, using viruses. And so you can design viruses and cells and this kind of stuff. And I do believe that this was designed for a particular purpose, but the thing is, it wasn't military grade. And that's probably our only saving grace, is that this virus is not military grade. I think if it was military grade, we see a whole lot more people dead. But if it was military grade, it would have been done in some other installation and probably not have been released, at least not accidentally. But since it was accidentally released and it was supposed to be a do-nothing virus, which probably is the reason they probably didn't take precautions. But the thing is, if it mutates and it becomes a problem and they do pick up the virus and they find out what the designs were, a lot of this stuff is new and a lot of people don't know what the hell they're doing. And sometimes you get a person that doesn't quite know what they're doing and they can accidentally make something that is harmful. And this is probably what happened. And once the Chinese find out that this could be harmful, they did their precautions. They went into their protocols. They started locking things down. They closed off borders. They banned flights. They banned ingoing and outgoing traffic, which is the same thing that Korea did once they found out how problematic that this bug, this organism could be. Hong Kong, Taiwan, they all did the same thing. We see people closing borders. You see countries closing borders. This is not a drill. This is not a hoax. I know people believe that this is a hoax. If this is a hoax, it's a damn good one. If this is a hoax, then you can't afford not to play along. I hear a lot of people say that they don't believe it. They don't believe that this is real. They don't believe that this is a real thing. They think this is just press. I can tell you by the reaction of different countries all over the world, this is not press. This is not a publicity stunt. Nobody's going to destroy their economy. Nobody's going to lose trillions of dollars for a publicity stunt. If the con game is going to be to this level, then what's coming behind that con game is something you don't want to see. Because if they're willing to go to this length to do a ruse or a hoax, then the reward for them doing it must be huge. And if that is the case, what's behind door number 3 is a whole lot worse than a virus. Because the virus could be contained within a few months, maybe a year. Now, as viruses do, they will come back, but it will be contained within a year. Okay. If they're playing a hoax and they're playing a ruse and they're wanting to destroy stock markets and stuff like that, then financially, that is probably an outcome you do not want to see. If China and the United States and Europe was all in on this together, you don't want to see it. You do not want to see what's behind door number 3. I can tell you that. That's how come I believe that this is a real thing. And it's very possible. I actually talked about this years ago with Nicole Ali, our resident expert. I said that putting these kind of devices and this kind of power in not ordinary people's, but in a lot more hands, even though they're skilled, that means a lot more accidents can happen. And sometimes those accidents can have detrimental consequences. And that's what you might be seeing here. Is it man-made? I do believe it is. Is it serious? I do believe it is. Why are they locking things down? I think they're locking things down as a precaution because the last time you had a worldwide pandemic like this, which was the Spanish flu, the original H1N1, back in 1918, which is rumored, it's not definite. So this is conspiracy theory 101, which is rumored to have come out of Fort Detrick, Maryland back in 1918 and shipped with birds and soldiers, American soldiers, into the theater, the European theater in Spain and in France in 1918. And that virus, that flu, killed between 50 and 100 million people, which is like 5% of the population back then. Some people say it was higher, some people say it was lower, but it killed 5% of the population. Fortunately, this is 1918, and sanitation and food and other kind of things are actually better now than they were in 1918. So a pandemic killing off that many people in these days and times is probably not going to happen. I would have to say, err on the side of caution. It's probably not going to happen. Will it kill some people? Well, the flu does. And this is probably a little bit more, serious than the flu, maybe a lot more serious. But the thing is, they don't know what they have. And what they're doing now is erring on the side of caution, because if a pandemic does break out and it does travel and it does start killing 200 or 300 million people in this, we talk about 2%. We talk about, just 2%. You know how many people that is? Last time it was, 1.8 billion. Can you imagine that they killed almost 100 million people, right? Can you imagine 500 million people dying on this globe from the flu, and what kind of ramifications and reverberations that's going to have if that happens? Which is probably why they're taking this precaution. They don't want to see that, and rightfully so. So I might be talking more about it later on, because this is not going away anytime soon. And I've talked about it before, but this is where I plant the flag on what I feel about COVID-19. I'm demonetized, so Google really can't do very much. Okay, they can't demonetize me because I said COVID. I don't know why YouTube is doing something stupid as demonetizing people that mention the virus. It has to be discussed because it is serious. This YouTube is not supposed to be happy days. Okay, it's supposed to be a information platform, which it is. Lastly, let's get to the third thing, which is something else that I talked about, and why I think that the effect of the virus is probably going to be more serious than the virus itself, which is the effect on markets. The fact that China shut down their economy, virtually shut down their economy, almost to ground its economy to a halt. They're just now letting few people go back to work because they need to feed people, because they're running out of supplies. In other words, whatever they had stocked up it's going. They need to start feeding people. Otherwise, you're going to have people dying of starvation and not the flu. And that is probably worse than the flu itself. So they're letting people go back to work slowly but surely to get the economy rolling enough to where they can keep people alive. So in that essence, it's going to relieve some of the pressure that the economy, the world global economy, and the markets have endured so far. But the fact that China had to shut down its economy for a month or two, it screws up the global supply chain. I pulled up a couple of articles about the just-in-time, or what we call lean supply chain, which most of the world is actually on. Because I was actually arguing with Preem on Art New Styles channel, and this is the stuff that we're arguing about. And you know how you throw out a term and you throw out a concept, even though you've researched the term and the concept for the last 30 years or more, get into an argument about people that have no idea what you're talking about. But anyway, I pulled it up, and sure enough, most of the world is on a just-in-time or a lean mode, because they're trying to make as much profit as they can, and there's only so much profit you can strip out of any given environment, right? And the capitalists have stripped out as much as they can, and they're looking for ways to actually strip out more. And the only way to do that is get leaner and leaner and leaner. You go from cutting off fat to losing muscle, and now down to as close to the bone as possible. That's the way capitalism works. in an organized environment where things are flowing. You make tons of profit. Everything gets done. Goods and services come to market very efficiently and very rapidly. Everything's good until you get something like this, which is what happened. I was saying in an email to one of my subs that two things you don't want to see show up is the Green Reaper in your room when you're alive and and you're close to death. You don't want to see the Green Reaper show up in your room, and you don't want to see a black swan in a market, especially in a fragile market like this one. This global market has been artificially pumped up and kept alive over the last 12 years with low interest rates and artificial liquidity and basically charging the credit card. And basically the global economy is really not a healthy patient. Your banks are not healthy. So all they needed is an event, a black swan, to show up. And it didn't show up as a war. They fought that off. You know, they could have had a global war in the Middle East. They shook that off. People squashed that, put the kibosh on that. They had banks damn near failing. They put the kibosh on that. They could handle that. They knew that would come up. Those are not black swans. What they never saw coming, and this is my opinion, they never saw coming is something like this, a virus that would shut down Asia like this. They never saw this coming. Nobody saw this coming. And the thing is that had it happened in America, because profits over everything, would have never shut down the economy, or at least it originally shut down the economy. China and Asia is very, very germophobic. You see them wearing masks in the best of times, right? So when something happens like this, naturally, they're going to react and sometimes overreact, trying to shut down a whole city. They shut down a whole economy. They went into almost like hibernation for a month, okay? And if it was China of 40 years ago, it wouldn't be as big a deal. But fast forward to the 21st century, to 2020, China is the biggest consumer of raw materials on the planet. Oil, food, copper, steel, whatever, right? They're the biggest consumer on the planet because they're the biggest manufacturer on the planet. And so why finished goods are not coming into the supply chain to keep things going, like nuts, bolts, screws, wood, fabric, paper, stuff that we would never think of because it's an everyday occurrence. It doesn't mean anything because it's so cheap. But the thing is, when those items are needed to put together bigger items or more value-oriented items, and you can't get a supply of them, it's going to shut down other places. Like Amazon's having issues because goods that are sold through Amazon, most of that stuff comes from where? Asia. And even the countries that are not shut down, like Singapore, like Taiwan, like Hong Kong, even Korea, they're slowed down by this virus, by this black swan. So they're not taking in as many goods. People aren't traveling. People aren't getting on planes. American Airlines has probably filed for bankruptcy. And there's probably others that will fall right in behind it because the flow of goods, the flow of services, and the flow of consumers is slowed down. Now that it's over here, it's not just on the supply side; it's also on the consumption side, because America does consume more finished goods than any other country on the planet, and they're slowing down. They haven't stopped, but they're slowing down. And you put those two things together, you look at and see what's happening to your markets. The reason you see panic in the markets is because people have gotten their profits and they want out. They want out, and they want out now. You can't go out now when your market opens up, limit down. You can't get out. So now you have to accept pennies on the dollar for your stock. Do you do that? Or do you wait for the next day, which will probably also be limit down? The only thing that is keeping this market from plunging straight down to the floor, not to the floor, but down to a relative floor. Floors are relative in the stock market. From crashing completely is the circuit breaker. Circuit breakers and the plunge protection team, look them up. They're actually a real thing. There used to be a myth. It used to be a stock market, almost a stock market myth back when I was trading 30 years ago, right? trading 30 years ago, the plunge protection team was a myth. Now you can actually find it on Wikipedia, which I find fascinating. But this is the black swan. This is the sum of all fears. This is the potential train going off the veritable tracks and taking the whole world with it. Potentially. But hopefully, and I do think this is probably a good chance, the virus is probably not as serious as people fear. That's what I'm hoping. Will it be more serious than normal? Yes. Is it as serious as people are reacting to? Probably not. But the thing is, they do not know what they have. And they do not know what this potential of this virus is. And they are taking precautions, which they should. They're taking the proper precautions because you don't know how deadly this stuff is and what causes it and who's at risk. They have no clue. And until they do, they're actually protecting not only the populace, but also the market. If this stuff really got going and it was actually deadlier than it appears to be, and a whole swath of people started dying, then this stuff will be out of control. So they're doing the prudent thing by orderly shutting down economies, orderly shutting down movements to halt the spread, or at least slow it down. So thereby protecting the people and thereby protecting the economy. Because at the end of the day, really the only thing keeping almost 8 billion people alive is this complex thing we call the global economy. If that is wrecked, as they say in a margin call, using that analogy, the music's just slowing. Were the music to stop in this global economy, this model would not be even close. It will be considerably worse. Music's just slowing. Let's pray that the music does not stop. Because if it does, God save us all. But anyway, that's all I got for my morning talk. This is just brief. Like I said, my patrons, especially if you want to live stream, you guys want to holler, chat about this, we can holler about it. If not, there's other stuff that I got to do or that I should be doing with my lazy behind. I'll put up something later. Been collecting charts for the markets and stuff like that. I probably need to talk about that briefly. I'm sure Dollar will weigh in on this at some point. But other than that, this is BGS and I'm out. And I'll